I'm sure that many of us grew up with Prehistoric Park. It was one of my all-time favorite shows growing up. Like once I got the DVDs for it, it was over. It was just constantly on. I loved that show so much. One of the reasons why it worked so well was because of the talent behind it. Now, of course, many of you probably know that Nigel Marven was basically the lead star of the show. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why the show works so well is because Nigel Marven knows how to work with animals. And so as a result, he was able to place that onto the extinct animals. And by extension, you really believe what's happening on screen because it feels like he's interacting with actual animals. It was a huge part of my childhood. And that's why I was really glad that I was able to get the chance to talk to Nigel one-on-one, face-to-face through a Zoom meeting. And so that's what this video is. Take it away.
Yeah, we had that problem last time. Hi, Evan.
Hello, how are we doing today?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. So I just figured, thank you. First of all, thank you for chatting with me today. I really do appreciate that.
Thank you. That's good. That's a good background with all your dinosaurs.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah, absolutely. Huge fan of that stuff. You could probably guess that I spent a huge portion of my childhood watching Prehistoric Park and Chased by Dinosaurs. Those
Yeah,
were
no.
the big things that that were always on my TV. I figured that today I can kind of just talk to you a little bit about Prehistoric Park, as that was probably one of my favorite shows that I watched growing up. And, especially considering the fact that we're pretty close to the 20-year anniversary of that show, and just kind of get your overall thoughts about that whole thing. Does that sound all right?
Yeah, whatever you need, I'm ready.
Awesome. So first of all, I know that you mostly work with actual animals and things like that. What was it like to work with, animals that are no longer here, the long extinct animals? Like you're mostly working with animatronics and in most cases CGI models. What was that experience like?
Yeah, interesting because when they did Prehistoric Park and Sea Monsters, they said should we get an actor rather than a wildlife host?
Mm,
But the producers said, look, no, use a wildlife host because they will know how to interact with animals. So if it's an extinct animal, they'll know how you would handle a baby Deinosuchus or how you would get close to a dinosaur and all of those things. And when I first went for the audition, they put a tennis ball on a stick and said, Nigel, imagine that's the eye of a T-Rex.
that
Uh,
probably works. About the same size. That works out.
I'm not an actor, so it felt a bit silly doing it. But when
Yeah.
you see the great work that Frame Store do with it, and all of us, all of your listeners, we would love to travel back in time to see dinosaurs. So it was great for me to see it. And I still think when I'm an old man, I'll look back at those shows and think I really did travel back in time. The CGI is still good. And even though it's coming up to the 20-year anniversary, it really has stood the test of time. Some of these new CGI shows, certainly underwater things, Sea Monsters was nearly as good as some of the modern ones. I think they really got it right under the water. So
Yeah.
that was the cleverness of Frame Store, Jasper James and Tim Haynes, who are the producers of those shows.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. I was just watching it with my daughter the other day, and it's just like, man, this still looks great to this day. I still believe that you're getting chased by these extinct creatures. And I think that like them going with someone like you, I think was definitely the right call because you actually believe when you're watching it, you believe what you're seeing because you have the experience of working with actual animals and things like that. So it really conveys quite nicely through the screen.
Yeah, no, and I think obviously Jurassic Park and that franchise, they're brilliant movies, but it's a different concept when there's an actor with the dinosaurs. It's not,
Right.
and they tried to copy the techniques of a wildlife show, so putting critter cams on Megalodon and tracking the animals and looking for footprints and all of those sorts of things. So it was a docudrama rather than a drama, which is why it's so real and why it was so much fun to make. I mean, I as you say, animatronics. When I get really close to things, they had to have animatronics because you can't put your hands around the seed.
Yeah.
The Crassigyrinus scoticus, which was the giant amphibian that's the fossils only been found in prehistoric Scotland,
Mm.
and an animatronic, and I'm wrestling with that, and it can open its eyes and snap its jaws. So that was great fun. But then when it's swimming under the water and I'm just looking at it, that's when they do the computer graphics. But when
Right.
you're grappling with something, you need an animatronic.
Yeah, and that stuff looks really good too. Like with all of the ornithomimuses and like the close-up shots of the T-Rex. It's like, man, that's amazing. Still really good stuff that was pulled off with that. Um, on top of that, am I correct in saying that one of your favorite dinosaurs would be Microraptor?
Yeah, that's right. So I mean, you've had enough problems bringing wolves back to Yellowstone, and we would certainly have problems reintroducing wolves back into the UK. We just haven't got enough space. I think with lynx, we should introduce lynx because they'd help control the deer, and you'd never see a lynx. But wolves are much more obvious. But so to bring back a T-Rex, I think would be very problematic, and bring back a tiny dinosaur with feathers about the size of a jackdaw that could glide from tree to tree. I've got lots of pet birds myself. I keep, well, not lots, but I've got a pet burrowing owl called Digger, who's now 6 years old, and he lives in the garden and flies free in the garden.
Oh,
Just having a microraptor like that. You know, when I was a kid, I had a pet magpie that used to follow me to school, and of course, even as an older person, I've dreamt that how great it would be to have a microraptor jumping from rooftop to rooftop.
that would be a sight to see. That's definitely true. Uh,
Yeah.
but what was it like to work with like making that specific episode with the Microraptor? Like, what was your overall experience with that?
That was great because that was in Rotorua, New Zealand. So they chose locations that were a match for the prehistoric. Well, I really didn't do very much in a studio. It was mainly on location, about 30 days per episode for each in a location.
Mm,
First episode, Congigio National in Chile, that's got forests of monkey puzzle araucaria trees. They're living fossils. When you see one of those in a garden or in an arboretum, those were around when the dinosaurs were there. But
right.
Microraptor went to Rotorua in New Zealand. That's got bubbling mud. So that looked exactly like the volcanic areas of ancient China where those dinosaurs were preserved perfectly. It was like a dinosaur Pompeii because carbon monoxide came out of the volcano and the dinosaurs were preserved in their sleep. Mei Long was, sleeping dragon that was preserved in its sleep. The Microraptors were big titanosaurs. Then I love the scene where I'm rocket netting the Microraptor, and then there's a eruption, and then the big sauropods come past me and nearly injure a Microraptor. So
Yeah.
it was a great scene, and I enjoyed, being in New Zealand. I saw some great birds that are only found in New Zealand. I saw a tuatara, which is a living fossil again. So it was great seeing some contemporary animals while we were doing the filming. I mean, they didn't feature in the show, of course, because they weren't around when dinosaurs were. Tuataras were, but not the birds, those birds that are there today. So no,
Yeah.
it was fun, and well, and I love the animatronic. The only thing wrong with the animatronic is um, they'd obviously found a dead magpie and pulled all the feathers off and stuck those feathers on the animatronic.
Oh, really?
I'd have preferred it if it was like more colourful feathers
Oh,
rather than magpie feathers.
it's definitely interesting now because now we have like a good idea of what color Microraptor was too, and it's like kind of on the same track. I mean, they had more of like an iridescent, like bluish black sheen, so they're kind of close in terms of their portrayal.
Yeah, they struck lucky by using the magpie, but it's because I knew it was a magpie that put me off a bit. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you could imagine they had that iridescence. So and as you say, the pigments have been fossilized, so they know what they look like. So no, I think if you were going to bring something back, it would be great to have a Microraptor. There's all this controversy at the moment, and well, it's not a controversy. They did not bring dire wolves back.
That that was certainly a fun couple of weeks.
Yeah, and we don't really know what. I mean, I've been to La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles, where, of course, there's a lot of those sorts of creatures, lots of dire wolves in the tar pits. But I don't think we're too sure what they look like, and I'm not sure that they were actually white. So
Yeah. Very Game of Thrones,
yeah,
those ones looked.
the tagline for ours is "Extinction is not forever." Well, it really is. So for the fish and game, not fish and game, but for some of the people in the US government or our government saying, "Oh, we don't have to worry about conservation anymore because we can bring these things back with genetics." No, of course, the Endangered Species Act in any country is very important, because if we lose animals, we're never going to get them back.
Right. It's very important. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
And yeah, like, ascend to their core, what they basically were just gray wolves that just, had modified traits. So not entirely bringing back an old extinct animal.
yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that was certainly fun. To continue on, out of all of your out of all of the episodes that you created for Prehistoric Park, which one would you consider to be your favorite?
I think the one going back into Carboniferous times, the insect one, it's mind-boggling what happens over time. So where there's a fish and chip shop in Glasgow, Scotland today, there was a subtropical swamp uh,
Right.
650 million years ago. To go back in time to see to go back in a time period where there was dragonflies as big as hawks flying around, a lot more oxygen in the air, so the insects would grow larger. No predators, of course. Um, Arthur Plura, that giant millipede, what a creature that was! And all the kids that watch that show, it's their favourite. A 6'2" millipede is fantastic, and there's incontrovertible proof that those things existed. If you go to the Isle of Arran, just above the tide line, you can see these fossil trackways of that giant millipede, Arthur Plura. So, great fun. So I think I'd like to have gone back in those days to have seen, the age of insects.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's crazy. You just sit down and think. It's like there was a millipede that was longer than I am tall. That's just terrifying, but awesome at the same time.
Great, great fun, and they're very, very strange creatures around in those days.
Oh yeah, absolutely. After that, of course, we never got a season two, and I don't think there was ever talks of a season two. Let's say if like they ever did choose to do that and you were on board with it, what creatures would you like to showcase bringing traveling through time and bringing back from extinction?
Spinosaurus,
Oh,
Spinosaurus. We never did that. I'd love to snorkel with Spinosaurus, and the reason there wasn't a season two is because of Primeval. So, uh, Prehistoric Park was made at the same time as Primeval by the same production company. So, a drama beats a docudrama. So, in the UK, Primeval went out in the autumn slot, in the fall slot. Prehistoric Park went out in the middle of the summer. So that was the time when all the kids had broken up for school. So even though the DVD sold more than Pirates of the Caribbean in the first week, even though in Australia Prehistoric Park beat Desperate Housewives in the ratings, there wasn't a second season because it didn't do that brilliantly in the UK, and they'd obviously funded quite a lot of it. If there hadn't been Primeval, Prehistoric Park would have been shown in the fall. I'm sure it would have got a lot more viewers than it got in the summer.
yeah.
And little models of me now, because it would have gone on for 3 or 4 seasons.
Wow. That would have been pretty cool to see.
Yeah, they had an idea, another series called Hell's Aquarium, where I'd go back and get prehistoric creatures for an aquarium. Spinosaurus, obviously, if you did it nowadays, there's a lot more, new paleontological research that you could incorporate into
Yeah.
the. And obviously, they're doing a lot. They've just done a new Walking with Dinosaurs, and um, obviously Apple TV did that amazing new one as well with great CGI.
Mm.
But they're still great if you send a bloke back in time, or,
Yeah.
or a bloke or a woman. But I mean, to actually send somebody back in time to give scale to the creations, that's what inspires people. So I'm so proud there's a whole generation of paleontologists that were inspired by Prehistoric Park. And in fact, there's some American ones that American paleontologists working in Australia, they found a new species of thylacine that they named after me. And some Spanish paleontologists found a Cretaceous wasp in amber. It was a new genus to science, and that's called Diamonora marvini because when they were growing up, they watched Prehistoric Park. So that's great. I mean, that's better than any television award to have a creature named after you, even extinct ones. So I was very proud of those things.
Definitely like get immortalized by that point. Always in prehistory. Yeah, man, I definitely agree with your wanting to go and see Spinosaurus. I mean, yeah, like you said, it would definitely be outdated by today's standards, but still be awesome to see, such a interesting creature. And um, that style of documentary, I think, was always my favorite to see because of the reasons that you brought up, that you get that scale. You have a person that goes back and, they're standing with these dinosaurs and other prehistoric creatures, and you get like a good sense of their size, or you get like, straight from the mouth of another person, they tell you like the way that they acted. And that's a really good way to kind of educate, the things that we currently know about these animals, and, just showing people how we know, or showing it in action, essentially. I think it's a fantastic way.
The producers came up with good stories. I mean, the giant claw was a great story. I mean, to find that thing that was a fossil, they thought was the rib of a fossilized turtle, but in fact was the claws of Therizinosaurus. And that was a great scene with Therizinosaurus in the finale when I saw them for the first time, and we knew that they, maybe it's a just so story, but I think there is proof that they used them like a giraffe's neck to bring leaves down to their mouths, and
Yeah.
also in defense. So, when Tarbosaurus attacked me, and then they had a fight and all of that, it was great fun, really. So they had good stories, and it was good fun. And I say everyone that watches it, everyone wants to travel back in time to see those creatures.
Oh, I'd love to. I'd
And
probably give a lot of money to do that.
your daughter was as well, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, no, it was great fun.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. What like non-dinosaur creatures would you like to have some segments focused on?
Well, I think I mean if it was interacted with dinosaurs, you'd go for living fossils, like Nautilus and things like that. I mean, I in terms of animals that I haven't seen yet, I'm going to Mongolia at the end of August, not for a film, but to see snow leopards.
Oh, that's amazing.
I've never been to Madagascar, so if any of your listeners want to join me there, go to my website, nigelmarvin.com, and there's just two places left. We'll see many of the lemurs. I mean, obviously, fantastic lemurs there and chameleons. And there's 6 unique families of birds that you don't find anywhere else, vangers and ascites and things like that. So I've never been to Madagascar, so those are the places I want to go. I'm making a film in Slovakia at the moment, which has got more bears than any other country in Europe, and did an amazing sequence in March. There's a frog there that's brown for most of the year, except for 4 days, and then the males turn bright blue, and we were lucky enough to hit that at the right time. So the pond is full of these sky blue frogs. So there's still lots of things that I'd like to see, but I say Madagascar is a top destination that I've never been to before, and I can't wait to go there and see all the creatures there. And the great thing is that when I was a kid, if you were interested in birds, you were considered a geek. But now, of course, we know that dinosaurs didn't become extinct; they transformed into birds. So when you're seeing you think of the footprint of a theropod in comparison to a bird footprint, and they're almost exactly the same. So when you're seeing a bird, you're seeing a dinosaur. And the other thing, which is great, is when they call you a geek if you're interested in birds, is Ian Fleming was a bird watcher. And when he was friends with a guy who wrote a field guide to the birds of the West Indies, he spent a lot of time in the Caribbean. And the name of that guy was James Bond. So that's where Ian Fleming got the name for 007 from a guy who wrote a bird watching book. And if you watch the Bond movie, I've forgotten the name, where Halle Berry comes out of the water, Pierce Brosnan is reading a book and he puts it down on the table, and the book is Birds of the West Indies by James Bond. So it's a little um, how Ian Fleming came up with the name. So, birders aren't geeks. They've got a license to kill. So, and they're watching dinosaurs.
Yeah, if you need any more proof that birds are just amazing, there you go. That's all you need. But of all of the places that you've been to, what would you consider to be your favorite? Because obviously you travel a lot. Check out your Instagram, and it's very apparent.
It's very difficult because wherever I go, there's something interesting to see. I've just come back from the Ross Sea. I've seen 17 of the 18 kinds of penguins, but the Ross Sea is a part of Antarctica that about 22,000 people a year visit the Antarctic Peninsula. About 1,500 visit the Ross Sea, which is another part of Antarctica. And that's where all of the famous British explorers Scott and Shackleton started their expeditions to try to get to the South Pole. So as well as seeing emperor penguins, which is the largest penguin on Earth, as you know, we also visited the huts where Shackleton and Scott were based for their expedition. And obviously made me cry going into Scott's one, because us growing up here in the UK, we know about this great explorer that went to the South Pole. And when he got there was a Norwegian flag there planted by Amundsen, who'd got there first. And when they walked back, they all died. They didn't get back. It's a fantastic, and Shackleton was a guy whose boat was trapped in the ice, and he managed to save all of his crew. They did an amazing journey by boat, and then they got to Elephant Island, and then he climbed over the cliffs in South Georgia. They'd never been climbed before, went down the other side and didn't lose one of his men. So these are great stories of exploration. So I enjoyed being there. I love going to the US. You've got some great national parks there. I haven't been since the new administration, so I don't know how easy it is now. I've heard there's long lines to get into the national parks, but they used to be the pride of the world. But I think there's been some cuts and things, so there's not as many ranges and things there. But you've got amazing national parks. I've never been to Mount Rushmore. I'd like to see the presidents carved there. I've never been to. I've never seen the full colours in New Hampshire. That's something I'd like to do. I bet that's a lovely thing to see. And then, China, I've been into the Lufeng Valley, which was a great dinosaur site. And we were being filmed at the time. I was being filmed at the time with pandas in the wild, giant pandas in the wild. So Komodo is a great place, of course, to come face to face with Komodo dragons, the largest lizards around today. And I've done a lot in South Africa. When I was the host of Shark Week for Discovery, we seem to go every year to swim outside a cage with a great white shark. So I've done a lot of that as well. So I have been to a lot of places, and it's very difficult to pick one because everywhere has got something to commend it. I'm doing a film in Bangladesh at the moment. Now, Bangladesh, about the same size as the UK. We've got 60 million people here. They've got 175 million in Bangladesh. It's the most densely populated large country on Earth. But there's still elephants there. There's still some rare birds there. There's a temple where they feed these massive turtles bits of banana and things, which is an incredible spectacle. So, there's something to commend every place that I visit, really. But I'm very excited about Madagascar because that's I've never seen a snow leopard. Hopefully I'll do that in Mongolia in August. I've never been to Madagascar. Now that they call that the eighth continent, with all the lemurs and the chameleons and all those wonderful things there. So, I'm very, very excited about that in December.
Just always moving, huh?
Yeah. Always.
You had a lot of projects that you're also lending your voice to, like Claws for Minecraft, I think it was, Prehistoric Kingdom. Do you enjoy those projects as well? You think they're
Yeah, they're great fun. I think the Prehistoric Kingdom guys, they did a great, they did crowdfunding, and I think they've come up with a superb, um, game. So, that's really good, and it seems to be going from strength to strength. So, I enjoyed doing the voiceover from that. Minecraft was funny, because there was somebody wrote me a letter and said, "Look, I'm doing a Minecraft add-on. Would you be an avatar in it and lend your voice to it?" So I haven't got an agent, I don't bother with things like that. So I said, okay, I'll do it for £400 and 10% of the 10% of the profit. And he said, okay, that'll be fine, but I'll need to check that with my parents because I'm only 16. So I wrote back and said, it's great working with a young entrepreneur. And Matt and I are firm friends now. He's coming to Madagascar. He's a great stills photographer, so he'll be photographing the lemurs. But, obviously, I got paid the £200 and that's been quite successful. And I've got a little bit of money every month because of people, buying that game. So all of these things are very interesting. And he is a very clever young entrepreneur. So it was great to meet him. And you never know, how these things are going to take off. An agent would have said, "Oh, yeah, Nigel will do it, but it will be $10,000 per hour, and he wants this and this and this." But if you work it out yourself, it all has interesting spin-offs.
Yeah, definitely.
And
And
life's about enjoying things, not just about money.
absolutely. And like I'll lead off I have like this little series on my channel where I'll talk about Prehistoric Kingdom, right? All the creatures. And I always end it off by saying, okay, now let's hear what Nigel has to say about it. And I'll click on the creature and then we'll get your input in the video. It's always a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, great. No, I'll listen out to that.
So again, thank you, Nigel. Again, I really do appreciate you finding the time to talk to me. I really do appreciate that. You're a huge part of my childhood. Yeah, it was really great having you on.
No, it was brilliant speaking to you, and you asked some great questions, and your channel is great. So, I'm very proud to have spoken to the paleo guy. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Once again, thank you so much to Nigel for finding the time to talk to me. Like, that is seriously something that is just incredibly awesome to happen, considering the fact that I grew up watching the shows that Nigel was a big part of. So that is just absolutely incredible. But that's pretty much all I have for this video today. If you like dinosaur related content, please consider subscribing to the channel. I would love to have you on board. But until next time, thank you guys so much for watching and have an awesome day.